Very good.
Let me welcome you to this episode of Mango Tree Dialogues. And I'm very happy that you've been able to join me under the mango tree as I reflect today upon the 63rd independence anniversary of our beloved Jamaica. 63 years, that's not really a very long time when you really think about it for a nation. That's a very young nation. And when we reflect on 63 years since our liberation, and I almost said our so-called liberation, but I will come back to that, why I would have characterized it as such. Liberation from British colonial rule. And we look back over those years, we have to admit in very fundamental ways that the country has seen a certain amount of progress of which we can be justly proud. There have been many negatives, and many ways in which we have not addressed some of the deep problems that beset the country. But I think that all in all, we can say that we have done fairly well. I'll put it that no stronger than that. And that there is a great deal of work to be done, a future still to be forged, and a nation, a strong, vibrant nation of which we all can be proud to be built. All right, so this is a reflection on where we are and a reflection on where we are coming from. Those of you who are familiar with my writings in the Jamaica Observer especially, will know that I have been very critical of what has been described as our independence. Because, when you talk about an independent country, you're talking about one that has enjoyed or ought to be enjoying a full and total control over its own destiny. When you talk about sovereignty for a country, you're talking about a situation in which that country enjoys the powers of its own self-determination, the powers of its own securing its own destiny without having any other external power looking over its shoulders. And that is why at the beginning I hesitated and spoke about so-called independence, because we have to ask ourselves, especially at this critical stage, and every celebration of independence brings this very pointedly to my mind, to really ask ourselves the question whether we are truly independent. And what is it that is holding us back from taking off the shackles of the colonialism that still holds us in a vice grip? And might I not ask the question, is it not a kind of an indulgence of hypocrisy when we talk about us being independent, when we know that there are so many vestiges of the British colonial arrangement under which we are still governed? Can we say that we are truly independent, for example, when the head of state, who is the Governor General, who is now the King's representative for years? The Governor General was the Queen's because Queen Elizabeth had been on the monarchical throne for the longest of any in our own lifetime. But now we have King Charles, and the King Charles Charles's representative in Jamaica is the Governor General. So the head of state, who is the Governor General, still has a very large presence in our constitutional arrangement. And this is not something that is to be taken for granted. Because we may say, oh, he's just a ceremonial figure. But is he really? Is he just a ceremonial figure? Or does he hold a very integral part of the decision making that we do in Jamaica? For example, in signing off on our laws. Our laws that are passed in the parliament cannot become law. The bills that are passed cannot become law until the Governor General, the King's representative in Jamaica, signs off on it. So much for sovereignty. We still have to be holding on to the King of England, his representative sitting in Jamaica, for us to be considered for our laws, the laws that are passed by our parliament, the people who we elect to go there on our behalf to make these laws and to have them executed. They cannot be executed, let me repeat, until the King's representative in Jamaica signs off on those laws. That, for me, is not independence. That, for me, that we have indulged over these 60-odd years is hypocrisy. And that is why, I hesitate to tell people happy independence. I understand the reason for the happiness. I understand the reason for the day, but if happiness means you're just going to get a day off and you can go to the beach and you can relax, or you can find an extra set of hours in which you can do your own thing and you're free from the trammels of a daily work routine. And be my guest. Enjoy it. Enjoy it to the fullest. I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody because that is what I think many people see it as anyway. I don't see people today sitting in their office or sitting on their couches or sitting on the beach reflecting on what Jamaica has been and what Jamaica will be. They will not be caught up thinking about the mundane matters that I'm presenting to you right now about King Charles's sovereignty over Jamaica. But anyway, these are things that are with us. And that is why I say that they are hypocritical in the way that we tell people that they must celebrate. And I sometimes ask ourselves what are we really celebrating? Because we're not celebrating any real sovereignty, given what I just said. And that is just one aspect of it. The king still being in charge over our destiny through his representative in the country, the Governor General. But it goes further, and this too is a lie to what I said earlier. Not only do the laws that are passed, not only do they have to go through the signature for them to become effective, the signature of the Governor General, but when it comes to any Jamaican having a problem going through the due process of his particular situation, a matter that he has in the courts, being adjudicated, and after that has gone through the Jamaican courts, his matter has gone, the problem that he has gone through the Jamaican court system. And he has enough money to appeal a decision that has been made by the courts. He makes his appeal. It is considered by the Jamaican Appeals Court. And then the Jamaican's Appeal Court is not the final body that determines his particular situation. He can make an appeal all the way to what is called the Privy Council. Again, another British and another vestige of our colonial past. What am I saying, friends? I am saying that even when these laws are passed, and first they have to be signed off by the Governor General, and then, when they become law, and you get caught up under one of those laws, and you have to go through the courts to get your thing adjudicated, and it is adjudicated through the courts. That's not the end of the matter. If you appeal, you now have to appeal to the Privy Council as the final appellate, what they call appellate appeal court, the final appeals court for Jamaica is not located in Jamaica. It is not even located in the Caribbean. And that's another matter with the CCJ. But it is located in the metropole in London. Another of those colonial things that we glorify. When we talk about celebrating independence, what are we really celebrating? No Jamaican, no ordinary Jamaican can have his matters adjudicated in his as a final appeal in his own country. He now has to, and she now has to make that appeal to the King's Court, the law lords in London. And they can rule, and once they rule, that's the end of the matter. Or they can rule sending it back down to the appeals court down here, as they have done on occasions. But the point is that they have the final determination, not Jamaicans. So these are the things that bother me when we talk about independence. Because the law of any country, the rule of law, is a basic prerequisite of any functioning democracy. And we know the extent to which the rule of law constrains us. The rule of law orders our day. So it's not a simple matter that it is that we cannot have our appeal, that our laws cannot be signed off by Jamaicans, signed off on by Jamaicans, and later on, if there's an appeal through the courts, that it cannot be determined by Jamaicans. We still have to be going to England, and this state of affairs has persisted for almost for 63 years now. And we dare to have the temerity to tell the Jamaican people that we are independent. It is hypocrisy of the highest order. Let's call it for what it is. And we fool ourselves, we kid ourselves every year when we come with this kind of mealy-mouthed suggestion to the people of Jamaica about how bold and how we fought for independence and so on. Fought for independence? By the time Norman Manley and Alexander Bustamante went to England, England was ready and just said, come and sign off here. And not only did they sign up, but they made sure that they gave them, they allowed, yes, the Constitutional Assembly that was put together, yes, by Jamaicans, but it had the imprimatur of the colonial masters. And that is why we have the Westminster system under which we are governed today. A system that has not really served the country well, and which we are now talking about reforming or revamping so that we can evolve a system of our own making that can lead to the better governance of the Jamaican people. So what was allowed, and that's crept into the constitutional arrangement that we made, that has not been fundamentally changed at all since 1962, is to make it so that the head of government, well, the head of state, The Governor General, the Queen's representative, remained there, as if the British still had to have a way of looking over our shoulders, and more than looking, to direct how your laws were going to be signed off and appealed later on. I can't indulge that kind of hypocrisy, friends. I'm sorry. And so while I would want to wish you a happy independence celebration. I only can do so within the context of the day itself that allows you that time away from regular labor. But if it is a matter of saying that we are independent, yes, there's a degree of that independence, yes, in that we are able to do our own elections and run our own affairs and all that sort of thing. But to what extent can we run our own affairs if we have to operate through the laws of the land, which can only be finally determined by the external power? An external power, Britain. To what extent can we really say we are independent if we cannot call our own shots? That is what bothers me. And that is why the matter of constitutional reform is such an urgent thing. Urgent. But as those of you who have been following what has been happening with that process in Jamaica, you can see that it is almost comatose. The government came with, I guess, with good intentions, setting up a ministry of legal affairs and constitutional change or whatever to carry the whole process. And what has evolved, as far as I'm concerned, is just abysmal. Because the central aspect of it, the central thing that should be done, was not done. And that is consultation with the people of Jamaica about what they want. There were just a few meetings held at different places, and they were not well attended. There was no attempt. And if the committee that was in charge of that, heavily laden with lawyers to boot, can come and say to me or to any Jamaican that they really went out there and got Jamaicans conscientized around it, got them excited about it, got them talking about it, I'll shut up about it. But because I'm very confident they can't come here and can't come and say that, because it is not true. It would not be true. The few spotty meetings that they held that were sparsely attended and so on, and the people are not electrified. I go around sometimes and I just ask ordinary Jamaicans, what do you think about constitutional change? And say, what is that? What that? How that? Eh? I don't tell you that I get any fun from it, but I find it very depressing, that a subject of such grave magnitude that people should be so excited about. They don't have a clue about what you're talking about. And when you try to explain to them, they say, true, sir. True, we need to change certain things. One of those things is that we need to have our all the people who represent us in parliament directly elected by the people, from prime minister all the way down to the Senate. I'm not talking, I don't want to get into the weeds on constitutional reform, but I'm just saying that some of the things that I think people would resonate with, because it would mean that any Jamaican can run for being prime minister, just like anybody in the United States can run for president, so long as you meet those criteria of age, birth, and so on. Sanity of mind. That is questionable in some regards, anyway. But I'm just touching on the subject to help us, friends, to understand where we are at right now. That a matter as serious as that speaks unerringly to the way in which we govern ourselves. is being treated with such scant disregard as far as I'm concerned. Because if the government was really serious about it, they would get out there and get the word out and really take it seriously. But they have demonstrated that they are not taking it seriously. If they want to be honest with themselves. And I know that there's not a great deal that's going to get done now that we are into this season of electoral competition that has to be done this by next month. Has to be determined who's going to govern the country for the next 5 years. I don't expect that, certainly between now and that announcement, that anything is going to be done. You don't even hear anybody talking about it on the on the campaign platforms. All you hear is a lot of noise, a lot of ray. And the people they're running for power. And the people are not getting any sense of how they will really govern, except perhaps for what has been happening with the governing party. And you can see their record and you can make a judgment on that. But a whole lot of, cascas and incendiary rhetoric that we have on the political platform from both sides are a disservice to the people. And one would have thought that a matter like constitutional reform should have been very central to it. And because that is so absent, I don't know, on reflection today, what we're talking about when we say independence. And the critical matters of governance are being given such a scant regard. I just, as I'm on this matter, I just want to say again that when it comes to the final appellate jurisdiction for our country, when it comes for our final court of appeal, when we really do come to the point that we want to move it away from Britain, I hope to God that we will not let it linger or languish in a halfway house. I mean, the sovereignty question over our legal appellate jurisdiction, our legal court of appeals. I hope it will not linger or languish in one of these Caribbean islands, in Trinidad, in Barbados, or any other. But that when we move it from England, we come straight home to Jamaica with it. That is what I call sovereignty. A lot of people like the CCJ, and different people like it for different reasons. Its pedigree is suspect in some regard, and I won't get into that now, the way it was set up. Really never had the participation of the Jamaican people either, I can say that much. I remember the days when it was being talked about and being rushed through Parliament and all that sort of thing. People never had a chance to even talk about it as to whether they wanted Jamaica to be part of any Caribbean arrangement. There was no robust debate, pretty much like what is happening now with the constitutional reform. There's a kind of inherent disrespect for the people of Jamaica. The ordinary people, they don't matter. They don't have anything to say about nothing. And that angers me. But if you really want to say that we are sovereign and we are independent, bring it straight home to Jamaica, where the ordinary man can take a taxi from St. Elizabeth all the way to the Supreme Court in Kingston and have his matter adjudicated without having to be worrying about expensive lawyers for the Privy Council or expensive lawyers to represent his case in Barbados. I don't care what people want to say about digital technology and your case being done. Most ordinary Jamaicans will not be able to participate in that kind of process. So let it be that the man can take a taxi from Treasure Beach and he can go to Kingston, or take a bus, take a minibus. His own lawyers here in Jamaica. and have his matter dealt with. His final, once he appeals, it is dealt with here. We have it in us to do it. Yes, the system is not the best, but it is not as ramshackle as it was once. A lot of improvements have been made to the system. Do you know, friends, that about over 80% of the matters, and there are not a lot of matters, that go to the Privy Council from here. Let us be frank about that. There are not a lot of matters that go from Jamaica to the Privy Council, but those that have made it there, it has been seen that most of these, at the estimate is that over 80% of them that end up before the law lords are not overturned. In other words, they agree with the decision that has been made in Jamaica in terms of the interpretation of our local laws. So what does that say? It has to say that we're doing something right. If these learned lawyers and law lords can find anything in our laws to overturn 80% of them, then we have to be doing something good. And, man for man, woman for woman, we have some of the best and brightest lawyers and legal minds in Jamaica that can stand their way anywhere in the world. But we don't respect that. We are not a self-respecting nation. We have to be running to others to guide us and guard the very guardrails that should set us free. Yes, I wish I never had to come to you with a rant on Independence Day. But to tell you frankly, I don't see a great deal in what to celebrate if you're talking about real independence. We are still in shackles. And until we can carry out fundamental reform of our process, fundamental reform that puts government into the hands of the people, taking it away from the politicians and the political leaders who have their own agendas, their own axes to grind, until we can have these set up under independent commissions that come from the very people themselves. We're not going to get anywhere. So it's not a matter of just swapping King Charles for a local person and then putting in that person's hands the powers that makes him a dictator over the lives of Jamaican people. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a rearrangement that puts the power into the hands of Jamaicans, takes it away from the political leaders and the political directorate, and truly puts it in the hands of the Jamaican people, which means we want to make them accountable to us, not we accountable to them for anything. They must account to us. They come to us looking a job like they're doing now. And when they get that job, they must know who their bosses are. But we have ceded the ground to them in the constitutional arrangement that we have. That has to change. And when that changes, and we can really take control of our own destiny, then I'll be very happy. I'll be the first man to go up on top of a house top and shout, "Happy independence." I'll be the very first person to whoop and holler, because we're now at least on the road to real freedom. So, friends, I'm sorry that that is how it has to be. I couldn't come here before you as a hypocrite. Yes, I understand the need for a little levity at this time. But let us not forget that in the midst of all of that we have a country to build. We have a country that has seen tremendous strides. We have a country, I believe, right at this point, that is poised for great things to happen. We have a country that, if we really take stock of ourselves, we can continue to be the great beacon, not just in the Caribbean, but for the rest of humanity. I really do believe that. So I wish you all the best. Enjoy yourself. Have a good time. And if you can find a little time to spare for reflection, remember where we are at right now and the need that we face for fundamental changes to the way in which we conduct our business, our political, social, and economic life as a nation. Thanks for listening to me. And if you like what I have said, just, the usual thing. And just go ahead and subscribe. It is very important that you subscribe and, let me know that you are standing with Mango Tree Dialogues as we forge a way forward for Jamaica. And whatever you do, war good. Thanks for being with me today. Be blessed.